This is a bonus edition of Space Minds by SpaceNews. This week, we're at the US Geospatial Intelligence Foundation GEOINT Symposium in St. Louis, where we'll post episodes Monday through Wednesday. Our guest today is Ronda Schrenk, CEO of the US Geospatial Intelligence Foundation. She sits down with Chief Content and Strategy Officer Mike Gruss to break down the latest news and insights from the event. But first, a word from our sponsor, Kepler Communications.
Kepler is delivering data at light speed with an SDA-compatible optical data relay network connecting space and Earth communications with low latency, high throughput, and enhanced security.
Hi, I'm Mike Gruss with SpaceNews, and welcome to our Space Minds podcast from GEOINT 2025. I'm joined today by Ronda Schrenk, the CEO of the US Geospatial Intelligence Foundation. Ronda, thanks so much for being here. I know this is a very busy week. There is a lot going on this week. Our reporters are listening for a whole host of issues. We're listening about budget uncertainty. We're listening to how this new administration is going to use commercial space capabilities. For it seems like probably a decade now, there's been a lot of talk about AI in the geospatial intelligence community. So let's start with you. Tell me what you're going to be listening for this week and some of the big themes that you're expecting.
All right. Well, first of all, Mike, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, and thank you for being at the best annual symposium that we have worldwide, I would say. Yes?
Yes.
So what are we listening to? We know that in the United States, there's a new administration. There have been a lot of policy changes, executive orders, and we are working with our government and industry partners to find alignment. Where there is change, there's opportunity, and there's vast opportunity. We might be biased, but we feel like geospatial intelligence is the foundation of all intelligence. It is the tradecraft that helps put context into our world, right? We know that everything happens at a place and time, whether it's in space, whether it's on the ground, and that's geo, or underground, whether that's in the water, like bathymetry information, or underground. And then the intelligence is the sense making, and it helps us not only determine what has happened, what is happening, but also more and more understand what may happen and make suggestions. We feel like all of those other intelligence disciplines are tied together by geospatial intelligence. So we're looking for alignment, and we're also looking for the changes that are happening. We had a chance to talk a little earlier, and we talked about access to launch, right? That has really been a game changer for so many, not only existing companies, but the startup companies, to be able to get their satellites on orbit, and a lot of them.
And prove out their technology.
Prove out their technologies, to improve their technology. One of our clients, Maxar, has just launched exquisite satellites with amazing quality. And then also to have precision, right? Because unless you can georeference the information to a place and time, it becomes less useful for intelligence. And then the other thing is additional modalities. So most of us know on our iPhone, and we can look at electro-optical imagery or what we're used to seeing, a picture. Today, geospatial intelligence is so much more than that. There are so many varieties, starting with radar imagery that's day and night, to hyperspectral imagery, and the list goes on. And what I'm starting to look for are a couple of things. We're starting to see companies work together. We're starting to see little mini constellations of collaboration, where if one has an electro-optical sensor and the radar sensors behind it, that there is starting to be automated tipping and queuing to...
I was just going to say, we just had a story on that. And
yes.
It was fantastic to learn about how that tipping and queuing is working, because it's been talked about for a long time, and now we're starting to see it really come into practice.
Yes, and faster than a human could do. It could send the imagery down, and I am a recovering imagery analyst, and pull up that image look at it on the computer and say, by golly, we have something going on here. Let me call my source provider to task the next sensor. This is happening right away, and imagine the speed that information then can get to decision makers and war fighters, as if we're talking about national security on the ground. We're also looking at the different types of sensors and how they're being optimized to answer different questions. So this morning at GEOINT Forward, we had a panel that talked about fires, right? And they said there's no longer a fire season, it's always fire. And one of the things that I loved that I've learned over time is there's bad fires and there's good fires. There are fires that are good for the ground and where it is. Sensors now are starting not only to be able to determine the extent of the fire, but also where it's burning hottest. And those are the most dangerous fires. And to put it together with other sensor data to help be predictive in nature for firefighters and land management personnel.
When you talk about what's different from last year to this year, what will you be looking for, or where do you expect there could be some changes?
Yeah, so the USGIF team has made some changes, and we always do each year. We are a nonprofit organization, and we are built to help drive the geospatial intelligence mission through tradecraft, through providing a place to meet each other, for networking, and to drive innovation. So some of the changes that I'm seeing are, we had Chad Anderson on stage this morning. We have investors, we have VCs coming and participating in our forum to not only talk with those that are already in their portfolio companies, but those that might be, right? To help those startups understand pathways into the geospatial.
Which 10 years ago, that seems, not quite unimaginable, but there was certainly much more of a gap that felt maybe a little more closed off.
A lot more closed off, absolutely. The conversation is far more robust. He just published a book about a year ago called The Space Economy. So he literally wrote the book on the space economy. And I loved, after his talk, he did a book signing, and the line was more than an hour long. And I went down the line, I wanted to understand who wants to talk to him. And it ranged from students that are still 2 high schoolers, several college students, a few that have just graduated, to the entire gambit of our community. Startups, mid-career, late in career, wanting to talk more about him. And I see us having more investor-type conversations and participation. Another thing that hopefully you will see is our international presence.
I was just going to ask about that because General Saltzman is speaking, I believe, on Wednesday. He spent a lot of his time at Space Symposium last month talking about the importance of international cooperation. But I wanted to ask, what does that international element look like for the GEOINT community?
Yeah, there's so many. We could peel back this onion. If you've got a couple of days, we could sit here and suss it out. But we'll pull it back to a few. So first of all, US GIF, we are here. We are headquartered in the United States, and geospatial intelligence is a team sport. And we need all of our partners, not only our US partners, but our global partners, to come together in support of our collective national security. When we talk about General Saltzman, yes, our mission in national security becomes more difficult every year. And we talk about our near-peer adversaries, and some are starting to say peer, right? Yep. When we talk about China, and for someone who's been in this community a long time, that's scary. We need all of our partners to work with us. When we talk about satellite resources, geospatial intelligence analysis, we're not the only game in town. And we have global partners that have the same, close to the same, and maybe in some areas of the world, depending on the region we're looking at, perhaps even better sources and methods. So to be able to team with our international partners in support of national security in many ways.
That could be some of that tipping and queuing that we just talked about.
Absolutely, I think is imperative. Another one that, so USGIF is the official accreditation body for geospatial intelligence. We have more than 20 universities that have accreditations ranging from undergrad to PhD in the United States. We have our first out of the United States in Portugal, and right now we are working with the St. Louis University in Madrid, as well as the Polytechnic University in Madrid for master's level accreditation in geospatial intelligence. Why that's important to me is that we are creating a level playing field of understanding at the collegiate level of this tradecraft, preparing that pipeline for our global community.
I wanted to touch again on some of the keynotes that'll be here this week, and it's a great lineup. But there's the DNI, for example. There's the head of NGA. You know, you've worked in the intelligence community for a long time, and I always think of these keynotes sometimes as a way to reset or to say, hey, here's what to expect for the next 12 months from some of these organizations. What do you expect, or what were you listening for when you heard those type of speeches? You know.
Yeah, no, I love that question. So I am a recovering government analyst,
Right.
And as a more junior person, say 15 or 20 years ago, I loved getting to come and listen to the director. If you work within an analysis directorate of thousands of people, you might not ever get to hear firsthand from the director of what she's thinking about or what he's thinking about, and it does signal the intent. They're very closely choreographed at the messaging level. So yes, we would listen. Often in past years, NGA has come with a top 10, right?
Yeah.
They've talked about a push on technological capabilities. Mark Mansell was often very good about that. This year, I'm not sure what Admiral Whitworth, get my right admiral, what Admiral Whitworth will talk about. He's still sharpening his pencil and shaping that message. Really important, and we're so proud, is that the Director of National Intelligence will come to the GEOINT Symposium tomorrow on Monday, and this will be her first CONUS Symposium since she took office 4 months ago.
I would expect there will be a commercial element, if not for both of them, certainly for one of them, that they will talk about the importance of using industry in new ways.
I suspect I will be a part of the conversation. One of the things that we've looked for that I'm really excited is that she has signaled that she would like to talk for a short time and then have a conversation. So what that signals to me is that she's open to having the conversation to explain her trajectory, how she wants to lead the intelligence community. And if you read her bio, she was moved by 9/11 into public service and has been a part of public service for her entire career in different ways. She serves in the armed forces. I'm excited to talk about her. I'm excited to understand how she will lead in really, we're going through what is a government reset, right? A full US federal government reset, and how she will lead the intelligence community.
Yeah, I think we'll all be listening for some clues there.
Yeah.
Last thing I wanted to bring up, we're obviously in St. Louis. NGA has made a giant investment in St. Louis with the NGA West campus. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of being here in St. Louis and this year before this new facility kind of gets going, and what that means more broadly to the GEOINT community.
Absolutely. So when we signed the contract to do this symposium this year, we had anticipated NGA would have been open by now. And then COVID got in the way and slowed it down a little bit. The upside to that, right, I said earlier, where there's change, there's opportunity, is that we have a series of tours, bus tours. Hopefully you will be on one of them. Without the building being open, it's easier for us to access it and to have sort of a pre-open house for our community to see the workspaces. There will be a lot more open workspace that will enable easier access for international partners, for uncleared partners to collaborate and to co-work with the government employees.
And those are some of the, not obstacles, but those are some of the hiccups that
They make it
the community
hard.
faces today.
Yeah, they make it hard. So NGA is really leaning in to the current work environment and understanding how to do the collaboration better, right? We said 10, 15 years ago, these conversations with VCs didn't happen. 20 years ago, when USGIF was founded, the conversations with industry, and dare I say the press also, weren't as easy to come by, right? As a young government employee, young and go with young 20 years ago, it was a little scary for me to think about a conversation with an industry partner. Today, that is more commonplace because of events like this, and with this new workplace, hopefully it will be more commonplace throughout the year.
Great. Well, Rhonda, thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. And all of our coverage from GEOINT will be available on spacenews.com. We'll have a great lineup of podcast guests this week, and I wanted to thank our sponsor this week, Kepler Communications. Thanks so much for joining us.